So in our previous lecture we studied about the basics, the fundamentals of exceptions. We have differentiated them from errors, and we delved into the types of exceptions. So starting from there only, types of exceptions when you see is basically two types of exceptions. One is the user defined exception and another one is the built-in exception, and within the built-in exception you have checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. And in our today's lecture we are going to look into the specific examples and programs, and through which we will be trying to understand, we will try to understand the concept of checked and unchecked exceptions. So checked exceptions, as I told you, that these are compile time exceptions. Why these are known as compile time exceptions? Because these are checked at the compile time by the compiler. That means if your code is about to throw, or if your code throws a checked exception, then your compiler will force the programmer to either handle that particular exception or specify that exception using the throws keyword, and your compiler is going to check them at the compile time. That means you will not be able to compile your program if you have checked exception in your program and you have not handled it. So this is what your checked exception in Java means. In order to understand this checked exception thoroughly, let us consider a program which is having a checked exception, and that checked exception is not neither handled or not used with throws thing. And what your program is going to do in such a case, let us try to see. So here we have a program which says import java dot input output io dot star, and we have a class CFG. Inside this class CFG we have our main method, which is we have defined in the very traditional way, public static void main and some string arguments as the parameters. Now here in this program, what are we trying to do? We are actually trying to read a particular file, not the whole file, but we have only tried to read the 3 lines of this particular file. So for that we are going to create an object of the class file reader. So that says as file reader file is equals to new file reader, and within the bracket you need to define the whole path of the file from which you need to read. So the path here is C drive. Within the C drive you have a test folder, and within the test folder you have a file which is named as a.txt. So the agenda of this program is to read starting first 3 lines of this a.txt, and as we are going to take these 3 lines from this file a.txt, and we are going to print them. We also need, for this whole process, we also need something which is known as buffer. So for that we have buffered reader. File input is equals to new buffered reader, and within this buffered reader we have passed the argument of file, and that file is actually an instance variable which is pointing towards the object of the class file reader, and which file I am talking about here is that file from which you want to we can say from which you want to read those 3 lines. So even if you are not getting these 2 lines, which is file reader file and buffered reader file input thoroughly, then you need not to worry, because in this series we have not considered the topic of file handling in detail. But as of now you can you can assume that these are the 2 statements which are there to read the 3 which are there to read from the file, and also this is going to help us in printing these lines which we are going to read from the text file onto the screen, and how it is being done. So for that a very simple uh, uh, we can say a very simple function, which is the read line function is being used, and read line, as the name indicates, is going to read one line, and as the agenda is to add 3 lines, we have started a for loop in which we have maintained a counter, and that counter says for int counter equals to 0, counter less than 3, and counter plus plus system dot out dot println file input, which is the kind of instance variable of the buffered reader whose object is pointing towards the variable instance variable file, and instance variable file in turn is pointing towards the file C drive test a.txt. So, file input dot read line and then file input dot close. Now, this is actually, I can say, is a program which is trying to read the 3 lines from that particular file whose path we have given. So, now the question is, we are actually going through the topic of checked exception. So, whatever what is going to happen when we are going to compile this program. So, on line number 6, there is going to be an error which says unreported exception, which is file not found exception, must be caught or declared to be thrown. So, basically this statement means that there is an exception which is known as file not found exception, and the programmer must handle that file not found exception whenever the programmer is working with this object of the file reader class. So, that is what it means. I am reading the error again, and that is going to be a compile time error. That means compiler will not allow you to proceed with the compilation as error free, because this code is having a checked exception which the programmer has not handled. So, according to the compiler, it is mandatory for the programmer to handle the exception if any, and if it is a checked exception, it has to be handled by the programmer. So, here line number 6 in this particular program, which is nothing but the line of file reader, file is equals to new file reader, and the path within the bracket, which is actually creating an object of the class file reader, and the instance variable file is pointing towards this object. So, that the runtime system is reporting as unreported exception, file not found exception must be caught or declared to be thrown. So, either you need to catch it, that means, or you need to declare it with the throw keyword. So, basically you need to somehow you need to handle it, because this is a exception which is a checked exception. Apart from that, at line number 11, it is saying unreported exception, IO exception, input output exception must be caught or declared to be thrown. Similar situation in the statement or in the keyword read line, that read line is also throwing an exception, or also mean to throw an exception which is an input output exception, also a checked exception. So, must be caught or declared to be thrown. Then also, whenever we are closing this object, which is the file input object, wherever we are using this file input object, where that is one in the read line, one with the read line function and another with the close function whenever we are closing the file. So, again it is going to give an unreported exception, input output exception must be caught or declared to be thrown. So, basically 2 exceptions are here available within this particular code, which is our code of this reading from the file and printing those lines onto the screen. So, one is your file not found exception, and another one is the input output exception. So, these 2 are basically checked exceptions which are available which can be raised or which are available along with this particular program whenever you are dealing with files. So your so your compiler wants, or your compiler will force you to handle these exceptions somehow. So either you can catch these exceptions, or you can specify these exception using the keyword throws. So that we will see how it is to be done. First of all, here we are going to understand the meaning of checked exception and unchecked exception thoroughly. Now, as we have seen that we have got 3 errors, and now these errors are to be kind of we can say fixed. In order to fix the above program, either we need to specify a list of exceptions using throws, or we will be using we need to use a try catch block. These are the 2 mechanisms which are there to handle the checked exceptions. We will be dealing with each one of them very thoroughly in our upcoming lectures, but as of now let us see how it is going to do. So, here if you can see we have modified that program, and that program now says that this is the program to illustrate the checked exceptions where file not found exception does not occur. So, input java.io.star, then we have that class, and within that class we have public static void main and then string args is there. And now please notice the word which says throws IO exception. So, throws IO exception we have written, and file not found exception is let us say not occurring here, and we have handled this IO exception which is a checked exception with this particular code, and then hence we have written file reader file is equals to new file reader and as an argument of the file reader we need to give the parameter of which is the whole path of the file which we want to read. And then we have taken the class of buffered reader as we did in previous version. So, buffered reader file input is equals to new buffered reader, and within the bracket we are passing that instance variable which we have just created on the line above, and by placing a counter or any other variable which is going to run for 3 times. So, for int counter equals to 0, counter less than 3, counter plus plus, we need to print system.out.println file input dot read line and then file input dot close. Now, when you compare this version with the previous version, what is the difference? The difference is the word throws input output exception, which is being written with the main function. So, here what a programmer wants to convey to the compiler, that this function main is actually going to throw an input output exception, and by specifying that with the throws input output IO exception, this is a way to handle that checked exception. Now, your compiler is satisfied as far as IO exception is concerned. File not found exception we have not handled here, and if you want to handle that file not found exception, you can write throws file not found exception as well. So, this is the way you can handle your checked exception. So, checked exception as we have seen in the program are something which are being actually we can say examined at the time of compilation, and if your program is something which is going to throw a checked exception, compiler will not allow you to compile that program unless you handle it. And in order to handle, either you use the try catch or you use the term or you use the keyword throws. So, here we have handled this input output exception with the help of keyword throws, and as when you compile this program, you will be having, you know, 3 lines of your, you know, a dot txt. Whatever 3 lines there are in this a dot txt will be printed on the screen as per the program, and now your program is actually, you know, I can say working fine, and as an output it is going to give 3 lines of C drive test a dot txt, which was the actual, you know, kind of we can say agenda. So, this was basically, you know, your checked exceptions. Now, unchecked exceptions, when we talk about, these are the exceptions for which what I can say is compiler is not bothered about. So, that means these are the exceptions, these which are not checked at the, which are not examined, which are not verified at the compilation time. Now, even if your programmer is not going to, you know, handle this unchecked exception, your compiler will not, you know, raise any flag or will raise any error, at least at the time of, you know, compilation, yes. But whenever there is an exception, it is kind of, you know, we can say a runtime error. So, runtime error is there. So, that means at the time of, not at the time of compilation, but yet at the at the runtime, it is definitely, you know, going to create a runtime error. But yes, your compiler will not force you to handle that particular exception, because that is an, you know, we can say an unchecked exception. Now, what kind of, or what all exceptions will be there in the list of the unchecked exceptions? So, a short list we have, you know, seen in our previous lecture. Among them, one of, you know, a very common unchecked exception is arithmetic exception. We will be considering a program which is going to compile, you know, fine, but when, you know, it is going to run, it will throw arithmetic exception when, you know, runs, and a compiler will allow it to compile, because arithmetic exception which that particular method or program is going to, you know, raise or is going to throw is an unchecked exception. So, your compiler is actually, you know, kind of we can say least bothered about your, you know, unchecked exceptions. So, let us see what, you know, how are we going to handle this unchecked exceptions. So, we have a class, and within that class we have public static void main string args, and here in this program what are we going to do? We are going to divide a number by 0. So, you all are aware, whenever we are going to divide a number by 0 in, you know, mathematics, we get answer as infinity, but inside the system dividing by 0 is something which is a runtime error. It is not a compile time error, because it is, we can say, it is not a syntactical error, and at the compile time your, you know, compiler is going to look for all those, you know, syntactical errors. So, hence, as it is not a syntactical error, it will not be caught at the compile time, because it is not a syntactic, it is because there is no mistake, but it will be caught at run time, because mathematically it is not correct. That means you cannot, you know, divide any number by 0, at least, you know, inside the computers. Theoretically, yes, we can say anything divided by 0 gives us the answer of infinity, but in case of computers, we can't, you know, depict it, we can't implement it. So, because the statement is mathematically incorrect, not syntactically, it is going to give us, you know, we can say a error at the runtime, not at the compile time. And here, you know, the program goes like this, which is very, very simple. We have declared integer x is equals to 0, then we have another variable integer y is equals to 10, and integer z is equals to y by x, which is nothing but, you know, we can say 10 by 0. So, when we talk about, you know, 10 by 0, so this is going to, the program is going to compile well. That means your compiler will not force you to handle this exception, and here is the output. The but whenever you are going to run the program, this will not run, because ultimately there is an exception, ultimately there is an error. So, exception, it is, you know, kind of what kind of output is it is going to generate, or what kind of, you know, runtime error it is going to generate is exception in thread main, java.lang.arithmetic exception, which is divide by 0 at main.main and the line number 5 and Java result 1. So, what does this whole kind of we can say explanation means? So, first of all it says the exception is being thrown by the method main. Now, why this is written as the thread main, please hold with that particular question. I will be answering this when we will be kind of going through the topic of threading. Then what kind of exception is this? So, exception is java.lang.arithmetic exception. That means arithmetic exception is an object in present inside the lang, and then the lang class is present inside the Java class, and that hierarchy we have already seen in our previous classes. So, this is the name of the exception, which is java.lang.arithmetic exception. Then the description of the exception says divide by 0, and then it is followed by followed by the line number on which this particular exception is occurring, and the line number is 5. So, that is why it is saying main dot java and colon 5. So, that means on line number 5 it is going to give an error, and Java result 1, or we can say here it is kind of a clean exit. It is not an kind of abnormal termination of the program. So, in short what we can say is the unchecked exceptions are the runtime exceptions that are not required to be caught or declared in a throws class, throws clause at least. Please remember, checked exception we have written throws input output exception, and here we do not need any throws clause. These exceptions are usually caused by programming errors such as attempting to access an index out of bounds in an array or attempting to divide by 0. We will be looking into some of the examples of these unchecked exceptions, but generally we can say that generally these exceptions are caused by errors in programming. Now, with this program, what if you want your you want your program to exit in a more user friendly way by saying that there is an by saying or by uttering a message which is customized that there is an error which is divide by 0. So, the program cannot run correctly or in a correct manner. All these things are possible because here we have not handled this exception using a try catch block, and this try catch block will be kind of we will be studying in our next lecture. So, yes, this can be a more instead of this particular output which is shown on the screen, we have our own customized output here, which is going to be more kind of a clean exit from the program as far as user's point of view is concerned. And now, as I was talking about, these unchecked exceptions are the runtime exceptions which are usually caused by programming errors. So, let us look into some of the examples of unchecked exceptions. So, the first unchecked exceptions which is very common is array index out of bounds exceptions. So, array index out of bounds exception I also explained in the previous class. I am just going to recall it here. Is it is a kind of exception, or this is an exception which is thrown when someone attempts to access an array index that is out of bounds. So, out of bounds array index means for example, you have declared an array of let us say size 7 and you want to access the 12th element of that particular array. So, 12th element in that array is not available. So, that means that index is actually out of bounds. So, that is one of the very common unchecked exceptions in the Java, and as it is unchecked, even if there is an array index out of bounds exception which is going to be thrown, compiler is not going to kind of verify it, or compiler is not going to check it. Another exception in this line is null pointer exception. So, this null pointer exception is thrown when someone attempts to access a null object reference. That means the object is actually kind of having no reference or having a null reference, and you want to, or the programmer want to programmer want to access that null object reference. Also, the third in this line is arithmetic exception. So, this arithmetic exception, we have just seen one of the examples of the arithmetic exception, but this is not like that divide by 0 situation or divide by 0 error is the only kind of situation for the arithmetic exceptions. There can be other situations also. For example, an invalid arithmetic operation is being performed on let us say, for example, we have two operators on which two operators A and B, on which a particular arithmetic operation, let us say x is not involved, x is not allowed, and we want to perform, or we are performing within the program, we are performing that arithmetic operation on those operator. So which are kind of we can say mismatched. So, the operators are not, or the operation is not mean for those kinds of operators. So, this kind of condition also comes under the umbrella of arithmetic exceptions. It is not only the divide by 0 exceptions. So, here in the list of unchecked exceptions, we have array index out of bounds, then we have null pointer exception, and then we have arithmetic exception, and the list goes on. This is not the exclusive list. I have just given you a few examples. So, in this lecture what we have studied is, we have started from the types of exceptions, then there are user defined types, and then built in types, and within the built in types we have checked exceptions and we have unchecked exceptions, and we have seen that these checked exceptions are something which are being kept an eye upon by the compiler, and compiler will not allow you to compile your program if it is having an unchecked exception, and the programmer has not handled that unchecked exception, has handled that checked exception, sorry. While unchecked exception, when we talk about, are the exceptions which are not kept an eye upon by the compiler. That means compiler will not force the programmer to handle that particular exception, even if that exception is not being handled in the program by the programmer. And then towards the last, we have seen some examples of unchecked exceptions which are available in Java, which is kind of array index out of bounds, null pointer exceptions, and arithmetic exceptions. So, here in this program we have understood the topic of checked and unchecked exceptions at a greater level of detail. Here is a list of references which is being used for the preparation of lecture. I hope you have enjoyed the lecture. I will see you in the next one. Till then, take care. Goodbye.